Welcome everyone to the first Conversations with Go On Girl. I'm Linda Johnson, co-founder and president of Go On Girl Book Club. 2021 marks our 30th year in existence as an organization who reads and supports authors from the African diaspora. We are kicking off this year with a series of conversations with authors and people in book publishing industry, from editors to Black booksellers. Go On Girl Book Club is a literary sisterhood of 500 dedicated book-loving and reading women in 48 chapters in 16 states and 38 cities who read a variety of genres written by Black authors. Today we have authors Bernice McFadden and Robin Page, and your co-hosts for today are Daphne Pierre from New York 18 and Julia Chance from New York 1. I will now turn it over to them, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Linda. Welcome, Bernice and Robin. I am your co-host, Daphne Pierre, as Linda mentioned, and I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today on a Saturday. I don't know. I know, Robin, you're in California, so I'm sure you're enjoying some weather, nice weather. And Bernice, I know you're in Brooklyn, so you're bearing the cold with us.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to start off by saying welcome, and let's just get into it. You know, we're living in a very crazy time right now. We've had a rough year, but Happy New Year to you both.
Thank you.
Wanted to kick it off. How have you guys been? With COVID, and obviously this past week, what's been going on? Talk to me a little bit how you guys are feeling.
I'm fine. First of all, I wanted to just say, thank you, Go On Girls. You've supported me since the beginning of my career, and that's 21 years. So thank you, and thank you for having me here. And it's so nice to meet Robin, and I'm so excited to hear about her book. How am I coping? I'm just, taking it day by day. That's all I can do.
Yeah. And Robin, yourself?
I'm feeling the same, but I have to say that I felt a lot of positive joy with Georgia. I felt a lot of happiness with the fact that we, turned the page on the last president, and we're going to be moving forward. And then last but not least, I feel really happy that Kamala is there, because it just, I have 2 daughters. I am a woman. I am happy. So with COVID, it has been tough. My father actually is right now recovering in the hospital from COVID, and that has been hard, but he's finally doing better. So I'm happy. And I know most people have experienced this, and it's very hard and very sad. And I'm grateful that he's doing better. And I also appreciate being here today, and thank you again for having me.
Well, sorry about your father, and we're definitely sending prayers and hoping that he gets better as soon as possible. It's just definitely been, it's awful. I've heard so many stories, I'm sure as everybody else has, about, people either having people, sick or losing a loved one. So definitely prayers to you. What have you guys done, learned about yourselves or done during this quarantine, part of the quarantine? I guess for you, Robin, being in California, you've been shut down pretty much all year. And yourself, Bernice, what have you guys learned about yourselves, or have you done and learned anything new, any trades during this time?
Well, I learned that if you spend your life in leggings, you don't know you've gained weight.
Yeah.
That's what I learned.
Very good lesson.
Hard lesson to learn. I haven't taken up any other creative activities. I know a lot of people did, and I felt bad that I didn't, but I stopped beating myself up about it. I've just been using the time to write.
Great. And Robin, anything for you?
I I thought I was going to be really good with this because I'm pretty solitary, and I did well until about, a month ago, and then it had gone on a little bit too long because I need to exercise, and it's hard to do that now, and tennis is canceled, and I need that, and so it's been hard. But I've actually had a harder time writing. I usually do better with my writing. I'm pretty disciplined, but it's been more difficult to find the inspiration and to be out in the world. So I have done it, but it's been more of a, just a really tedious process, which usually I find a little more joy in it.
Gotcha. Well, I, for one, have just learned that I can hold my liquor like I did in college. I've been keeping busy with GOG. Thanks to you ladies out there for keeping me on my toes. I pretend to work out. I have a Peloton, but it's collecting dust these past few weeks. But let's just jump into it. So I wanted to just, for those who don't know who you are, I'm just going to go ahead and just introduce you formally. But I always wanted to kick it off with just a little bit more personally, just to get to know you guys a little bit. But starting with Bernice. Bernice McFadden is an author of nine critically acclaimed novels, winner of 2017 American Book Award and the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Works in Fiction. She is a 4-time Hurston Wright Legacy Award finalist, as well as the recipient of 4 awards from the BCALA and 2-time GOG winning author. She won Author of the Year for her novel, The Book of Harlan, and New Author of the Year for her debut novel, Sugar. Robin was raised in Cincinnati and has degrees from UCLA and UC Irvine's MFA program. She is married, has 2 daughters, and lives in Los Angeles. She has powerfully mined her experience as a transplanted Midwesterner, a woman of color, and a mother of her debut novel, Small Silent Things, which is a nominee for our Go On Girl book clubs for the New Author of the Year award. So officially, I welcome you. So as a reader of both amazing books, Sugar and Small Silent Things. Now, Sugar being a book that is now celebrating its 20th year anniversary of release, I actually found some parallels between the 2 books, as one would, considering you guys were both debut authors at the time of your books of release. And the themes that I found were pretty phenomenal. I found the themes to be of trauma, sexuality, women's sexuality, familial issues as well, and many more. But we're going to touch upon a few today. I wanted to touch upon, for example, the trauma. In Sugar, you have 2 friends who experience a level of trauma. Your characters, Pearl and Sugar, of course. Pearl having lost a child at one point and not being able to get over, no one ever gets over losing a child, right? But having lost a child, and then you have Sugar, who's pretty much born into what is considered a horrible situation, but she doesn't necessarily realize it. Is pretty much life, that's just life for her. And then Robin, with your characters, Jocelyn and Simon, who both experience traumas from family member loss to the Rwandan genocide. What drew you both as a debut book to choose those as your themes, as part of the theme to discuss in your book?
Robin, please go first. I'm fascinated by your story. So,
well, I think probably Bernice knows, but I'm assuming that you experience this a little bit. I don't always know exactly how I find my way, but I'm trying to usually for myself, I'm trying to figure something out that I didn't understand that I've experienced. It generally is not the exact story, but it's a feeling, or it's kind of similar. It's not the exact thing, but it has parallel themes running through it that I'm trying to figure out for myself. So for me, I lost my brother in '94 to AIDS, and it was a very hard experience for me. I mean, I thought he was the best. And at that exact same time, I was in New York City with him, and the Rwandan genocide was happening. And that kind of clicked into my brain as sort of 2 things that remained tied for me, that I would think of in my life. And so I was trying to work out, I think, all of the trauma that I carried with my brother's death, because I was pretty functioning. And I really functioned quite well until we had a situation where we were kind of forced by a co-op board to sell his apartment. And, you know, I can kind of laugh at it now, but it really was a breaking point for me at the moment, because I didn't want to let go of that space that had belonged to him, right? Because I know now, of course, the place is not him, but, you know, this was something that kind of sent me into a bit of an emotional, you know, spiral. And so for me, I am always trying to work out something that is my own story in an at a distance, I guess I should say, and that makes it a little bit easier for me to handle. So I would say that's how I came to that story, and I wanted to figure out ways that you could solve your trauma. Can you find a friend? Can people who are grieving ever have the same experience, or is it to me, I think grief is pretty much always a solitary journey. I think you have to have it alone. And you know, I think I was trying to work that out in the book and see what I thought of that. And I'm still very confused, but it helps me. So that's kind of for me how I got there.
I think that my journey with Sugar was a little bit different. And again, the book is so old. It's celebrating 20 years, but I wrote it 30 years ago. So Sugar first came to me as a poem, and then I later refashioned it into a short story. And when I decided that I was going to tackle this thing we call a novel, Sugar was the story that jumped out at me. I will say that I feel I poured in all of the stories that I had heard, told to me, around me, by women in my family, and they experienced a lot of trauma growing up in Georgia and, you know, migrating north. And I can't say that I took one or two or three or five specific stories, but I took the nuances, I think, of each of those stories and poured it into the characters and poured it into the plot. And Robin, you may agree, we're always grappling with trauma, with some sort of trauma. Even as I try to avoid dealing with trauma in my work, I still find myself grappling with it. So yeah, that's how Sugar came about and how the trauma found Sugar and Sugar found me.
Well, I could say to the both of you, thank you, because you were definitely lending a voice to those who've experienced trauma. I know for me, for one, Robin, I was triggered at times with certain things when it came to relationships with the moms, and even with you, Bernice, the same thing, that feeling of abandonment. So I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of women who've experienced that. So thank you for drawing that in. What do you think was your, like, what is your, where do you pull a lot of your creative ideas from? I mean, outside of just the conversations and anecdotes, like you say, Bernice, like what other things would you say to fledgling writers or others that you would consider things that you would draw your creativity from?
I draw my creativity from a lot of times reading the work of people that I admire. I love nature, and that's very inspiring for me. Even though I don't listen to music when I write, I love music, and I might hear a lyric that will like ignite something in me. So many different places to go fishing for creativity. Yeah.
And Robin?
I'm exactly the same. That's what I would have said too. For me, number one would be other people's work. Usually, I really love a story that touches me, but is completely different than my own life. And so I usually, if I'm stuck in the process, I will read writers that I've loved. And for me, nature as well. I live pretty much in the woods. And then I listen to music only in relation to writing, not while I'm writing, the same as Bernice. But if I have a character and I've heard a lyric, then I will listen to that song again because it moved me in a certain way to kind of push the character through in my imagination. So that is how music works for me.
Okay. Well, that actually leads to my other question about your writing styles. Who are the writers that you consider to be influential for you, that you either read or that influence you in your own styles?
Ooh, I'm Toni Morrison. No, there are many.
Right.
Toni Morrison, I return to again and again and again. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, she's amazing. And Robin, any writers for you that stick out?
Yes, I'd say Toni Morrison as well, which of course is, I think everyone just is so sorry for that loss.
Yeah.
I love her work. I love the uniqueness, and I love the fact that she honors the people in her stories. They are always kind of, I'm in awe of how she writes about people. So I love her, and I also love Jacqueline Woodson's Another Brooklyn. I loved Red at the Bone. And I loved a book that is out of print now, but it has really affected sort of me and my life and my writing. And it's called The Basement by Kate Millett.
Oh.
It's a true crime story, but it's out of print now, but it's just a beautiful book.
Awesome.
Who's the author, Robin?
Kate Millett, Millet. You can order it. It's based on a true story, but what I loved about it is it tries to answer the question of why a victim allows themselves to be victimized. Because I think as a society, we are so judgmental of that. And she does such a good job of teaching the reader to have more openness and more empathy around that. I love it. It's a beautiful book.
Speaking of true stories, Bernice, we're going to put Robin under the light for a little bit. So your books, another theme that is very common between you two, especially with the two debut books, is sexuality. Robin, before we started, we had talked about this behind the scenes a little bit, that this book had a lot of the book club chapters talking, right? And there's some saying here that this is actually loosely based, it's autobiographical as far as the life is concerned. So what I'm concerned about, not concerned, but more interested in, is the how could I put it, the tryst between Jocelyn and Kate. Lots of sex scenes in that, lots of girl on girl. For those who don't know, who haven't read this book, if you're interested in listening, I would prefer listening to the book than reading it, because it definitely adds a little color. How true are some of these comminglings, entanglements with Kate?
I did not sleep with my tennis coach, if that's what you're asking me. I did, however, know that the book was working, because this is a true story. I came home and I had given my husband the book, and it had a very different ending, and he really hated it. And he didn't hate the book, but he hated the ending. And he said to me, "Honey, if you are sleeping with your tennis coach, you have to tell me now." And I said no. But what's true about it is, it is true that in my own experience, many of the moments in that book are true, okay? But I kind of shifted them to fiction, not meaning like the events, but more like there is that power position between a coach and a woman, and how they kind of, they're making money off of you. So right. There is sort of a lot of stroking going on, and a lot of making the person feel better. And there are many, many affairs in the tennis world. If you play tennis anywhere, whether you play it at the park, or you play it at a tennis club, or you play it at a public club, it doesn't matter. There are many affairs, because women are coming out and they're feeling good, and they're usually leaving their kids at home, and it makes you feel pretty youthful to play a sport when you get older. And so one thing kind of leads to another. But as far as, is it a true story? No. Yes. And I made the intentional decision, actually, to make it essentially a straight woman who ends up with a gay woman, because I think that we are all a little more fluid than we probably would like to admit, right? Absolutely. I think it's important to have that story. I think we have to start saying, Well, I always say to my girlfriend, I say, I feel the same way about like dating a woman as I do, about heroin. I'm sure it's fun, but it would probably ruin my life. I'm in a relationship, I'm in a marriage. So I'm not going to go there, but am I averse to it? No, not necessarily. It's just
Right.
that I'm already in a monogamous relationship.
Got it. And Bernice, I read Sugar, and the colors around this, even the slightest of sex scenes, or even just a description of maybe say the hand of a John on Sugar, or the smell of Joe when just laying in bed with Pearl. You were very colorful in that. And the one thing I love with that cat, with Sugar specifically, is even though she was a hooker, she was never apologetic for it. This was her life and this is who she was. And she was unapologetic about her sexuality. Is that how you feel as well as a woman? Is that what you wanted to portray in the book or in all of your books as far as women? Like, talk to me a little bit about your sexuality.
Absolutely. The women who raised me did not bite their tongue. Sex was demystified for me very early on in life. And I found it fascinating on a trip when I used to spend my summers in Barbados. Very religious, elders, right? And closed-minded, especially where sex was concerned. And I must have been about 6 or 7, maybe I was 7, no, maybe about 7 or 8. And there was a cat and it was pregnant. And I was like, oh, the cat is pregnant, it's gonna have kittens. And they were just horrified that I knew what sex was, where babies came from. And so that never left me. And I have a daughter and I raised her in the same way that the women who raised me, like, this is yours.
Mm-hmm.
No one should tell you how you should feel. I'm not telling you to go out there and be an extreme hoe, but I'm just saying that you should have experiences. You should have experiences, because that's what my mother always said. She said, no man should ever tell you how it's supposed to feel or how you should feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was really important that my belief in what a woman should feel about herself and about her sexuality was made clear through the portrayal of Sugar.
Awesome. Well, I loved it. Thank you. Because you're right. That is definitely something that is stigmatized, especially in the West Indian community. I mean, my grandmother told me when I was 11 or 12, you hold a boy's hand, you're getting pregnant. And she made me eat pomegranates so that I wouldn't have wet dreams. So yeah, that's
true.
That was, she had me do some crazy things to make sure that I didn't have sex. And let me tell you, I love me some sex, and but and Robin, then I had to listen to your book with headphones on, because it was just like, wait, when did Kate and Jocelyn decide to do anything else? These women were having sex in every which way, anywhere they could. And it was just passionate and amazing. You guys really wrote very colorfully. Like, I can smell the characters. I can feel them as I read them. So kudos to you guys. The other themes that I did find in the book as well were about abandonment and familial scars, right? Coupled with just not being able to let go a little bit of the trauma. Robin, one of the things that was discussed in our book club, my chapters book club, was about, for me, I was getting annoyed with Jocelyn, because it was like, everyone's trying to help you, but you're holding on to the hurt, which is understandable. But then it actually led me to do more research on it. And I found that psychologists say that this is what people really do, because they don't know what else, they don't know how to exist outside of the trauma. Would you say that for your characters, that's in a way, whether intentional or unintentional, this is what it was for them as well? Like, they wouldn't be able to let go because they don't know how to exist outside of that?
I think that, yes, I would agree with that. It's very important for me. I think especially for women, and more so for Black women, there is this idea that you can get over anything. And I think that is not true. And so I wanted to sort of, I guess, affirm the fact that it is okay to say, I have been traumatized and you hurt me, and I am going to carry that. Because I think there is this idea, even with children, where we say they'll get over it. And so I wanted to make sure that there was a residual trauma without there being, with there being hopefully a bit of a happier ending, right? But I think the dismissiveness that we have in the idea of how well women can survive certain things, all that does is it justifies the perpetrator, right? Because if we don't have to engage in the damage that gets done, then we don't have to acknowledge how bad the act is. And so while I think that most people sort of either dislike Jocelyn or they love Jocelyn, it's one of the two, which I think is kind of interesting. But I wanted her to carry these things, even though she does end up having essentially a happy marriage, essentially, right? It's complicated. She's a very good mother, essentially. She has a life of, luxury and leisure, essentially, but it's all complicated, but I still wanted her to carry that so that I could kind of respect the victim.
Yep. One of the comments that was brought up with in our chapter was that she pretty much existed, her and Simon both existed in spaces where trauma did not exist, being in an affluent community, hanging out in country clubs, Simon being this well-known executive, no one knowing that he's a survivor of a Rwandan genocide. And then for Bernice, with respect to sugar again, pretty much everyone in the town of Bigelow, it's the 50s, 40s and 50s, it is a time of, where Black people were still considered less than human and were only working as maids and steel workers and things like that, where like all of the traumas and inequities, they just existed through it, right? Sugar being born into being abandoned, and let alone then living in a brothel and being raised as a prostitute. This is all she knew, and this was life, and I felt that it led to how Black women, like you say, Robin, is expected to survive. Like, we're supposed to just get over it. This is what it is. These are the cards that were dealt, and to just continue to exist through those spaces. So I thought that interesting that you both lent a voice to that, and almost to even provoke thought to let everyone know that is not okay. Especially now with the current climate that we're in, a lot of light has been shed on trauma, Black women in general, and what we're experiencing as a whole in society, and letting people know that this is not okay. Right. So again, it's just amazing how a book written 20, 30 years ago, sorry, Bernice, and a book written almost 2 years ago now, we're still carrying those same things. Like it's a common theme throughout. Also, the familial scars. Now, I don't know, everyone's been talking about, genocidal traumas that we carry that is being passed down generation to generation. And it seems like even still, regardless if it was 100 years ago or now, people still have these familial scars that they carry. Both characters had issues with their mothers, right? I wonder, is that the same relationship that you may have with your moms, or was it something, again, gleaned from other people's experiences?
My mother had a very strained relationship with her mother, with my grandmother. And it's something that I grew up watching. They loved each other, but the love was hard. It was a difficult love. And for many years, I didn't understand. It wasn't until probably 2004 that my mother shared a story with me. And I was like, oh, this all makes sense. Mm-hmm. But to go about life and just live in this hurt for so many years and not address it, they never addressed it. It happened and life went on. Right. And even now, my mother is 77 years old. My grandmother's 95. And my mother is still in pain over that. Yeah. So yeah, this whole thing about, it's really interesting because, especially after the election in Georgia and everything, it was like, Black women save America again. It was like, well, who's saving us?
Exactly.
Who's coming to save us?
Right. 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 And Robin, what are your thoughts?
I have a good relationship with my mother, but I think I was thinking about, my mothering is very different than my mother's mothering. I think, and I could be wrong, I mean, you never know until your kids grow up, but I think I lived in a childhood that was really very ruled by adults. And I think that we had a fear of adults to some extent. And I think that fear was taken advantage of. And I think that we lived in a culture of not, of kind of a general sense that adults could kind of decide what happened to you. Right. And I try to teach my daughter, she is the boss of her body. She is the boss of herself. And I want her to be aware of that always. Whereas, we grew up in I grew up in Cincinnati, so it was very conservative. I didn't have to say yes or yes, ma'am, but that was there, right? And we were meant to listen. And it was, in my generation, I don't know how old you are, but we had definite corporal punishment across the board. I don't believe in that now for my own child, right? So that's something that I struggle with my parents. And what's so funny about it is my mother will say, "We never hit you," and it's just like, what are you talking about?
The revisionist history that they have, right? Oh my God.
Sister, and she was like, just ignore her. It's so I think, for me, I've made other decisions, but all in all, my mother was a good mother. And we continue to have a pretty good relationship.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. Thank you both for being so transparent and sharing that. That's amazing. This, like I said, I mentioned before, it triggered me because I, like your mom, Bernice, I had a very weird relationship with my mother, still do. And so when I was reading this, it was just bringing on a lot of feelings. And I was like, all right, I need to go to therapy because there are some things I still need to hash out that I thought I got over.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think it's important to parent our children differently than how our parents did us. Not that they did a bad job, but they dealt with what they could, right? And
they did the best they could. And it doesn't come with a manual.
Right.
And so I sometimes I get upset when I hear young people or older people complaining. I'm like, well, let's look at both sides, please.
Yeah.
But I think that therapy, yes, absolutely, that's the best thing to deal with it.
Oh, sure. That and lots of liquor for me. As I parent my own kid every now and then. So switching gears a little bit, what are your must-haves when you sit down and write?
Silence.
So are you the writer that goes off into the wilderness and some cabin in a house and?
No, I just closed my door. I mean, when I went up to McDowell in New Hampshire, that was such a wonderful experience. I was there for 3 weeks, and that was the cabin in the woods, and I loved that, and it really, really fed the story. I think I was working on Glorious at that time, but just my regular day, I have this room, this little cozy room that I could come up and close the door and just be with my thoughts and my characters. So silence is just very important, and a comfortable chair.
Yes, awesome. And Robin, what are your must-haves?
Mine is silence. I have to have light. I usually kind of try to follow the sun outside and just move my chair. And then I have to have coffee. I usually write in the morning, and I have to be awake and alert. But I do need silence, which is harder when I have, my daughter's home Zooming now, and that's a little bit more difficult.
Right, and you mentioned earlier it's been hard to be creative now because of you're not having to go anywhere, or obviously dealing with the current climate that we're in. Hopefully that changes, because I want to see what's next for you, for sure. We're all excited about that.
I'm still working, but it's harder. So
yeah. Also, just shifting gears. Also, how do you choose your publishers? Because I know for you, you're currently with HarperCollins. How did that relationship come to?
Well, I didn't choose my publisher. I wish I could. One day when I'm more like Bernice and I have a bunch of books, maybe I get to pick. So maybe your experience is different. I'd love to know that. But I got an agent, and then my agent sold or got editors interested. And in my situation, it was publisher from Amazon, which I can't remember what they're called. I'm sorry. I think it's called Little A. And then Harper Collins, but I'm actually Harper Perennial, which is an imprint of Harper Collins.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same company. And so then I decided between those two publishers. And I was lucky enough, I knew I had a very young African-American editor, and that was important to me. Actually, in both cases I did. And but I wanted to publish to a regular publisher. Just, that was a desire I had for myself, especially on my first book, I guess.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect, of course, for Harper. I mean, they publish amazing, books. So I've been I'm happy I picked that, but I did it primarily because I wanted to be able to have my book in bookstores as opposed to just online. The other editor at Little A was spectacular too. So
yeah. And Bernice, you've actually toggled between Akashic and Dutton. Did you have a say in that as well? Or was that your choice? I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the back. I thought he was in the paper.
I started my career with Dutton.
Right.
And I was with Dutton up until 2007, right? 8. And that's when the market crashed and everything went to hell. And I had this manuscript, Glorious, and Dutton didn't want it. And actually no one in any of the major publishing houses wanted this book. And so that's how I ended up with Akashic. Mm-hmm. Akashic is a boutique publisher here in Brooklyn. And I've got to tell you, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. Because prior to that, when the world was different, right? Black writers, many of the publishers just felt Black writers should be marketed to only Black readers. Yet still Black people were being marketed to for writers from all ethnicities. And so my career was kind of like in this little box that I couldn't break out of until I got to Akashic. And I was with them for 10 years. Yeah. And now I'm back with Dutton.
Right.
Yeah. So now I'm back at my first publishing home.
Gotcha. And would you say it's equally important to have the right editors to speak your voice and make sure that the book is being published in a way that is reaching the right readers who you want?
Absolutely. I mean, I know so much more now, 20 years later, than what I knew back in 1999. Yes, it is so important to have an editor who understands your work, understands you, and can get the marketing and publicity department behind the book, because that's also very important.
Right. Well, one of the questions that we have on our questionnaires with our book club that we generally will answer, which I think is a fun question, we usually get lost in it, is who would play your characters in your books? So Robin, for example, with Jocelyn, like we thought that Tandy Newton would be a good Jocelyn. Simon, we played around with Jamon Hansu. Maud was Reese Witherspoon. Would you think that was my chapter's answer, some of them. Are we on the money with that, or do you have other people in mind for your characters?
You are on the money. My problem is I don't watch a lot of TV, but there are certain people that I really love. I had a hard time with Jocelyn. I thought about it after I did the LA Chapters book club, because they asked me the same question and I couldn't really think of anything for her. So that might be good. And then I like, I don't know who plays the main character in Moonlight. I thought the older man, I thought he would be good for Simon. Ali, is that his last name?
Yes, actually, can't say his name. Mahershala Ali. Yeah. He was actually another person that we played around with too for Simon.
I just loved him, and I loved that movie. And I thought, I just think that he has the correct amount of manliness, but the correct amount of tenderness. Mm-hmm. That's how I pictured Simon, that he would be all man but tender. Right. That's who I would have picked. I think you're right on the money. Yes, though. Yeah, Tandy Newton, I hadn't thought of, but that would be good. She's a little skinny, I think, though. I don't know. I need a little bit.
Well, we'd have to make sure that she fattens up a little bit for the role. Obviously, actresses and actors do that, so that would be great. And Bernice, who would you have in mind for Sugar?
I think her name is Jodie Smith. She played in, oh God, what was the movie, Summer Before Last? Slim and...
Oh, I see. Oh my gosh, the title escapes me too.
Queen and Slim.
Queen and Slim.
Slim, yes, yes, yes. Right. And final question before I turn it over for the Q&A portion. So being that GOG is a book club, we're not just a book club, we're a sisterhood. And Linda mentioned earlier on that we have many chapters that go from either 7 to like 13 women in the chapter. If you had to form your own GOG chapter, who would you have in your chapter, living or dead?
What do you
mean, writers, or do you mean family members, or what do you
Anybody. Mean? This is your chapter that you're going to read books with and have conversations with. Who would you have in your book club?
Oh, my good girlfriends, and yeah, but you know what? I would love to have a diverse group of women from all backgrounds. And I think it's important because I feel like we need to be able to share experiences that may or may not connect us. And this is how we learn, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I would have very good friends. I would have obviously all women, and if I could have Toni Morrison alive in it, I'd be happy.
Oh yeah.
And then my older daughter, I would want in it, and my sister, and they live, elsewhere. But I agree. I think a diverse group of women from all different backgrounds is always good, because you learn something from everybody, and all different sexualities, and all, and ages too. I had a pretty young editor, and I had a moment kind of where I was a little irritated, and I thought, I have fought for your liberal attitude. Don't tell me anything, but it was a good thing for me to experience, right? And she saw the book in a different way, and it was good. So I think it is good to have kind of young and really old, 90-year-old women. My mother-in-law's 85, and she's in a book club, or 83 maybe. I'm not sure how old she is, but she's in her 80s, and she's in a book club. And I think that helps. We do sort of limit ourselves, I think, with the same type of women sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, not GOG. We actually have a junior GOG membership of young adults and younger women. I think they start at the age of 12 through 17, so school age. And also we have very senior women as well in GOG all over United States. So if your daughter is interested, we can definitely share the co-membership, co-chairs information with you, and we can get her involved. We also have virtual chapters, as well as we also have older women as well, because our chapters are mixed from various ages as well. And it's great to have a different perspective on the same book, right? Like when we were reading your book, for example, there are some women who had probably never seen their vagina before. And then there are others who play with it a little bit too much. So we were able to add, both sides of the coin for that conversation, which was very interesting. And I loved with Pearl when she would say, like, just being naked was just a clutch your pearl moment. And then when I was expecting her to actually touch herself, to be honest with you, when she got naked in her room and let her hair down, I was like, oh, Miss Pearl's finally gonna know what it feels like again. Like we're excited. So I thought that I think that having different perspectives from different age groups also helps. And that's one of the wonderful things about GOG, is that we have many walks of life, all women of color still, but having different experiences that we could all share. So thank you both for just the different sheds of light that you're able to do with the books, and being able to promote certain stories, and being a voice of women. And I'm actually going to turn it over to my co-host, Julia Chance.
Thank you, Daphne. This has been a great conversation, ladies. And we have some very good questions. The first question asks, when you write a book, what is your hope for what it will achieve?
I think I'm always trying, when I discover something that shocks me, I didn't learn this in school. If I don't know this, how many other people don't know it? I want to share that. So I try to tell, I uncover secrets in my books.
For me, I think I want to open up the story. So I think it's similar to what Bernice is saying. Maybe I just think that we have such a narrow view sometimes, and I would like the view to get bigger in every way. And I would like things to. I would like for people to feel that was the thing for me in my book. I think that we are so kind of held down by secrets and held down by the things that we keep hidden. And so I would like to have someone read this and say, oh, I never really thought of that way, and now I can forgive myself.
Mm.
Or my friend, or my mother, or, whatever.
Okay. Our next question is from Vivian Husband. Toni Morrison often spoke about the white gaze and working intentionally not to write for the white audience, but rather for us. Is that something you consider when you're writing?
First of all, when I'm writing, I'm thinking about me. And so if I'm thinking about me, that means I'm thinking about all Black people. And that's who I'm writing for, that's who I'm writing to. I'm not concerned with, hand-holding white readers to make them feel comfortable or better about historical events. As you all know, I write a lot of historical fiction. So no, I'm aware of the white gaze, and I am unaffected and unconcerned with it.
How about you, Robin?
I think I am unaffected and unconcerned with it as well. I think what happens is once the characters are real for me, then I'm not thinking about that actually as I'm processing it, because I'm just being open to the thing that's coming to me. But what I do think is important, and what I am aware of, is I don't want to be confined by the stereotypical stories that publishers have allowed me to have in the past. I'm not interested in those. I want to write something else. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of a pet peeve of mine. I feel somewhat, I think that publishers do want that, and they insist on it, and it's a constant battle. So I'm not interested in writing that, though. I can write about whatever I'd like to write about. The whole world belongs to me, and it shouldn't just be, the drug addict mother and the father who left.
Right.
To mince words, but I don't want to write that story all the time.
I like that. Yes, the whole world belongs to us.
Yeah.
Donna Hill says, talk about what you write. She doesn't mean genre, but the thing that you do across all of your work.
Ooh. The thing that I do across all of my work. I don't know, Robin. I'll let you lead. I think I need more time to think about that.
Exactly, sure. I mean, I would say I have had a moment in my life with a writer who I went to graduate school with, and I remember her saying, and I've thought of this since then, I always feel like I'm writing the same story over and over again. And so I'm not sure if this speaks to what the question is, if I'm understanding it correctly, but I do think I am always writing about resiliency, and whether or not I think that is a myth or not. I'm always writing about damage and the repercussions of damage, because those are the things that I'm really interested in. And so that's kind of what my fiction so far has had. But as I get older, and as I grow, and as I become smarter and more experienced, those things are probably going to change in some form, but I might just again and again return to those things.
I think then the thing that I tackle in every single novel is just probably the truth. I'm a Libra. I'm all about telling the truth. I hate lying, and not, even small lies I don't like to tell. So I'm very interested in telling the truth and the effects of telling the truth. And they say the truth will set you free. And I think that, you know, if America just sat down and told the truth, we could be done with all this madness and we could move forward. So I think that's what I do across all of my novels.
Okay. In your writing process, what types of characters leave you feeling hopeful and inspired?
Ooh.
Say in our writing experience, I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
Someone else in your writing process, but I guess, you know, we could just say, what types of characters leave you, the characters that you write about, what types leave you feeling hopeful and inspired?
Ooh. Oh, I don't know. Like, I think one of my favorite characters is Harlan from the Book of Harlan, and just his growth as a person. That was very inspirational for me to read his story, because obviously I wrote the story, but it's different. I don't know, Robin, if you go back and revisit your stories. Like, I can't read the book, but I can listen to the audio, and it's a very different experience for me. And it's almost like, well, you know, it's like listening to something that I had nothing to do with. So it's all new to me, and I was really proud of that character in that story.
I agree. I do. I actually, believe it or not, this is what when I was with the chapter in LA, I do not read my own book at all, ever. And I haven't listened to the audio either. This may change in time, but by the time that I'm finished with the book, people always say, do you miss your characters? It's just like, no, I'm so happy to be finished with the characters. I don't want to revisit. So if I were going to answer that question, I think if in the case of this book, the character that I actually liked writing the most was the daughter, Claudette, which is the least like me. So I think I'm the freest when I'm writing someone who has almost no similarities in terms of character, and then that allows me to feel hopeful. But generally, I am inspired by other writers and their characters, not my own, because it's you know, it's like work for us. I think for me, it is work. So I don't want to go back to that. I want to be done with it.
A question for Bernice. Jetta Mayberry asks, where does sugar sit from your perspective when viewed through the lens of a career full of other works and accolades? And how have those works flowed from sugar, if at all?
Where does sugar? Well, it's my debut book, and when I do listen to bits and pieces of it on audio, I haven't been able to listen to it from beginning to end. And sometimes I'll pick up, you know, like the new copy, the new edition, and I'll flip through it. And what I realize is how much I've grown as a writer. Okay. And I know that people love Sugar, and I'm so happy that people love her and they're still discovering her. But honestly, as the writer, I can flip through some chapters and cringe. I'm like, oh, I can't believe that I wrote that way. What was the second part?
The second part is how have other works flowed from Sugar, if at all?
The only other story that I think flowed from, well, absolutely not that I think, that I know flowed from Sugar, was the sequel, This Bitter Earth. And I have been toying with writing a third book, but it kind of like, it comes and it goes, it comes and it goes. So I don't know, maybe in a few years I'll tackle that.
Robin, are you working on anything currently?
I am. I'm working on a mystery, actually, because I really love mysteries. And I'm working on a mystery with a female African-American lead detective who has survived kind of a childhood cult life. Ooh. So based on the Yahweh Church. So that's what I'm working on.
Wow. The last 5 years have been all-consuming emotionally. Do you anticipate telling a story with COVID or social unrest, Black Lives Matter, political dysfunction as a backdrop for a larger narrative? Either of you? Well,
I've been writing about civil unrest several books. But yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that all of that is going to find its way into future works. I don't see how I can avoid it. I mean, 9/11 happened and I wrote about that. But this is such a bizarre, amazing, exciting, unsettling time to be alive. And I certainly want to document it.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Robin.
I was going to say, I think for me as well, I will end up writing about this, but it'll be a while from now because I think I'm kind of usually like 10 years behind what's going on unless it's talked about subtly. Even in my book now, I wanted to comment, even if it was subtly, on the loss of the election by Hillary Clinton. That was something that Simon knew because he has a more experienced life in kind of corrupt politics, where he knew that was never going to happen. There was never going to be a woman who was going to be the president, he says in the book. So for me, I think if I'm going to write about those things, it's going to be more subtle in that way. And I don't think I'm going to write about COVID. That I doubt, because I can't picture what that would look like with everyone in the book being in masks. But certainly I'm going to end up writing about the political, the Black Lives Matter movement, and just the way that we have the culture at large that isn't us has been duped by, I think, a madman. So,
Yes.
Yes. So at some point, it may be a nonfiction essay. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Okay. This is our final question, and it comes from Keisha Palmer Cousins. She asks, what is your favorite time period to set your stories in?
Oh, I love writing about the 1930s and the 1940s. I just love writing about that era. I don't know, maybe that's where I lived in my past life, but I think that's my favorite time period.
I don't think I have a favorite time period yet. So maybe at some point I will. I usually write fairly currently, whatever my short stories have been, it's been pretty current. And then I go back in the life of the writer. I usually have my stories around an event more than a time period. And then that dictates the time period.
Okay. Well, those are all our questions for the evening.
Thanks.
I'm going to throw it back to you, Daphne.
All right, everyone. Well, I guess we can, if you guys want to continue to talk, we're more than we have time to, or if you want, we can, it's up to you. It's really, I know we said we were going to be on for an hour. It's 6:04 now, so.
I have more questions.
We can ask you more questions. It's completely up to you at this stage. We want to be respectful of your time, so.
It's up to you, Robin. 1 or 2 more questions, you think?
Sure, of course. I'm home with COVID. I've got nowhere to go.
Okay, let's do it. Faye Bailey asks, Bernice, if you can choose one of your books to be made into a film, which book would it be?
I was just asked this question yesterday, and it changes. Every day it changes. So today, I would love to see either Glorious or The Book of Harlem on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Folks are also asking, both of you, what are you reading now?
Oh.
I'm reading Woman, Girl, Other, which I really love. I think it's great. It's funny and touching. And then I'm slowly reading Caste, which I think every American should have to read, period. Yeah. Every single American. And then, we would have a different. This is what I love about that book is it is accessible, it is academic, it is interesting, and it is really what we know, but I think so many people don't know, and I think they need to know. Mm-hmm. So I'm going very slowly because I want to get every bit of it. She's an amazing writer.
It should be required reading. I agree. That was an astonishing piece of work. I'm listening to Stamped from the Beginning. That is what I am currently listening to. And I just finished, Mediocre Are y'all familiar with this?
I am, yes. Who's that by, Bernice? Would you name the author of Mediocre?
What do I think?
No, would you name the author of Mediocre?
Let me pull it up. Now I'm going to slaughter this woman's name. It is Ijeoma.
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 Yeah.
Ijeoma Olu.
Yes.
Olu.
Ijeoma Olu.
Thank
She's
you.
Nigerian? Yeah.
Thank you. So it's Mediocre, The Dangerous Legacy of White Male America. Listen, let me tell you something.
I've heard her speak.
This book is outstanding. And who have I been recommending it to? All of the white men in my life.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I'm like, y'all have to read this because I don't think you understand really what the problem is. And she just highlighted everything. And I was like, that's what the issue is. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, kudos to her.
Robin, would you repeat the name of the first book that you said you were reading and tell us who the author is?
It's called Girl, Woman, Other. I don't know who the author is, and I'm sorry, I have to get a plug. My computer's about to run out. I have no idea.
Oh, she won, I know who this is. She actually, she was published by Akashic early on, I think. I'm sure. Oh, Bernadine Evaristo. She actually, this is the funny about this, and not even funny, haha. So Bernadine won the Booker Prize, the 2019 Booker Prize, but she had to share it with Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale.
Oh,
They couldn't even give her the blasted prize just for herself.
Wow.
The book is so good, though. It is so funny and touching. It's just, she has such an interesting way of writing.
Okay.
Really good.
What times of the day are most productive for you two as writers?
I think it depends. Like, I've been getting up in the morning and writing, but if I take a nap, like around 1 or 2 for a few hours, I could come back in the evening and pound out some more words.
How about you, Robin?
Usually what happens with me is at the beginning of writing a book, I kind of go quickly in the first draft and I usually write in the mornings. And then when I'm doing really well with a book, I write in the mornings and then I come back to it sort of sporadically during the day because I come up with things that I'm thinking about. So it's kind of, it depends on where I am in the writing, but mostly in the mornings. And then when it picks up, I write more sporadically.
I have a question. So being that you're both creatives, writing fiction and what have you, do you use anything to help? When I say use anything, that means whatever could be to help promote your creativity. So Bernice, what do you drink?
You know what helps my creativity? Long walks. I like to take really long walks. The weather has not been good for that here, so I'm missing out on that. I'm sipping on a little Grand Marnier. That kind of helps sometimes, depending.
And Bernice, since I know you're a mom too, and you write in the morning, so I guess, what do you do anything other than drinking coffee to help you write, or?
No, it doesn't. For me, I don't know how to explain it. I don't do well if I guess, I'm not sure. I think I just try to be very open. So whatever that means in the moment, if I happen to be drinking and I'm more open, then I receive things. I want to receive what I'm thinking of. It's hard to explain any differently than that. I don't think it's magic. I just think I'm thinking about the characters, and at a certain point in time, I'm more open. And if I can catch that moment, it works out best. So sometimes I just sit there and I can't get anything going, but then it happens and it's good.
What do you ladies want to be remembered for?
Again, I go back to truth, telling the truth, being unapologetic in my storytelling?
Let's see. I think the same, but I think I would like, again, just to go back to openness. I want people to accept that we are larger than we think, and it's okay to be those things that we have held secret, or kept inside of us. Whether that's sexuality, whether that's our history, whether that's a friendship, whether that's our fears. I would like things to get bigger rather than, more narrow. And I hope that that's how I write. I don't know. I mean, I don't have this relationship though with my writing where I know it's going to work out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, my intentions are there, but I'm not always successful.
Okay. How are we doing for time, Daphne?
We're good on time. I have one more question, and I think we can turn it over to Linda. How did you both know you were writers?
I knew from the age of 9. I told my mother, I think when I was 9, that I was going to grow up and become a writer. I enjoyed reading so much that when I started penning my own little short stories, I found that I experienced the same amount of joy that I did when I was reading. And I was like, well, this is how I want to spend my life.
Nice.
So yeah, I knew from very young.
And that was received well by your family, considering?
Oh yeah, they were like, oh, baby, you can be whatever you want to be. I don't know if they really believed it was going to happen, but they certainly, my mother certainly encouraged me. Yes.
And Robin, when did you know you were going to be that you were a writer?
I was actually an adult. I didn't know I was going to be a writer, and I wanted to always be a teacher from when I was younger. And then when I went to college, I was interested in Southern literature, and I read a lot of that. And I had a very inspirational teacher, and she assigned us, a fictional response to something that we've been reading. And so I wrote a story, and she said, you're a very good writer. You should, join Greg Saris, who's a Native American writer, his class. So I was able to get in his class, and then I was very interested in it, and I loved it. So I think I love books, and I love reading, and I love stories. And then this has taken me a long time to do, though. I've been writing a long time, and finally I've had some success with publishing. So I didn't know I wanted to be a writer, but I'm sure I want to be a writer now. So that's good.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. I'm going to turn it over to Linda for any final words, remarks.
Well, we're glad that you ladies are writers. So please continue to write those fabulous books so that we can read them. I want to thank you both for your time today. And I also want to thank all of you who joined us for our very first Conversations with GOG. Next up is going to be Walter Mosley. So please look for that information, and hopefully you all will join us then as well. So thank you all. This has been really wonderful.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
And gentlemen. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye.